Hello everyone, and welcome to the Boutique Hotels Crisis Guide to Communications, Branding, and Marketing. Thank you so much for joining us from your living room, bedroom, desk, outside, wherever you are. By the way, my name is Frances Karajian, founder and CEO of BLLA, the Boutique Lifestyle Leaders Association. And now I turn it over to Ariella.
Hi everyone, I'm Ariella Karajian, also known as Fran's daughter. I'm the partner and COO at BLLA, and my mom and I together have created our new baby called Stay Boutique. Just a little intro about BLLA. We're the official association for the world's boutique lifestyle leaders. We're the original hub supporting boutique and independent hotels all the way back since 2009, technically 2003. And we value leadership, advocacy, and education. I just wanted to also read you our mission statement because everything is all about values, and I know a lot of you here today are heavily involved in the boutique hospitality community. So here's our mission statement. As the official voice of the industry, BLLA is dedicated to not only championing boutique lifestyle culture as it grows, but actively advancing it, evolving with consumer trends and extending our global network to include innovative hoteliers, entrepreneurs, vendors, and visionaries in food, fashion, fitness, beauty, and beyond. Just a quick reminder, how you can support us. One, I'm gonna sound like a vlogger here, but please hit that subscribe button. We have a new YouTube page, and that's the way that we're able to stay connected with everyone. As many of you know, we host a lot of conferences, events, dinner parties, but we don't know what's happening with that at the moment. So we wanna do some more creative types of digital things, one of them being YouTube. So please, if you look up BLLA, it's also on our website, and in an email you'll get after this, please hit that subscribe button. We also have newsletters. It's all about informing our community of what's going on. So, you know, breaking news, some fun articles, new boutique hotels, construction, things like that. That's in our twice weekly newsletter. And then show that you stand with boutique. Use the hashtags #BoutiqueStrong and #SaveBoutiqueHotels, so that you want to help our global community. And all you gotta do is do a hashtag. We have lots of new initiatives coming out soon. I know the BLLA team and I have been working really, really hard to help our amazing hotels all around the world. So more information coming soon. And we're in an interesting time, right? So we need your support more than ever now. We've been a family. We always have been a family. And together, we've reinvented what a hotel is. And even through a crisis, we're going to continue being pioneers. Boutique hotels aren't going anywhere. We're just going to adapt what we call the new paradigm. So there's definitely a light at the end of this tunnel. And with that, I'm going to give the screen over to Cara, the CEO of Madison Meal Agency. Cara has been a big supporter of BLLA for many, many years. Cara, handing it off to you.
Thanks, Ariella. Hi, everybody. So excited to be here today. As you may know, the Madison Meal Agency is a lifestyle consulting firm based in Los Angeles with teams across the globe. We focus on hospitality, technology, media, real estate, and advise our clients through a variety of disciplines, including marketing and branding, revenue strategy, technology, and design. And so we're here today to collaborate with these amazing panelists and help you have gain access to insights of what's happening in the market today. So with that, I'll let everybody introduce themselves. We'll kick it over to Remy Allis, the founder and principal of Allis Branding and Creative Agency.
Hi, everyone. Remy Allis. I'm the founder and also chief strategist for Allis Studios. We are a luxury branding agency with offices in San Francisco and New York City, and predominantly work in real estate as well as various lifestyle categories. So high-rise condo development, hotels, mixed use, and into kind of wellness, fitness, what have you. So we do everything from original strategy and branding all the way through logos, websites, and extending into communications.
Awesome. Thank you. Carolyn, so lovely to have you today. Founder and president of CIIC, Carolyn Izzo Integrated Communications.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here today. And as you know, we're CIIC. We're a full service PR agency specializing in hospitality, boutique hotels. We work with travel and leisure, tourism boards, food and beverage, real estate as well. We're very specialized in those areas, and we're really happy to be here today on behalf of BLLA. Thank you so much.
So excited you're here. Hi, Richard. Welcome, founder of MEWS Property Management Systems.
Hi there. So MEWS. So I'm actually a recovering boutique hotelier myself. I started MEWS over 8 years ago now, and we've grown into one of the powerhouses, I think, changing this industry. Yeah, it's wonderful to be here and wonderful to be supporting and collaborating with BLLA, and yeah, really excited to share my insights.
Great, thank you so much. Patrick.
I'm Patrick Bosworth. I'm based in Las Vegas these days. I'm one of the 3 co-founders of Duetto, which is a hotel revenue strategy software company. We're in about 70 countries around the world, and I'm just excited to be participating today.
Awesome. Thank you all for being here. So we'll kick it off. We'll sort of start. We're going to cover a variety of disciplines today: marketing, branding, design, revenue, technology solutions. But I think we'll start the dialogue in sort of talking about what everyone is talking about, which is messaging and how you communicate to your audience during this time and stay dynamic and make what you feel are the best and right decisions. So maybe we'll start with Remy. Can you tell us a little bit how you envision brand messaging and PR communication shifting during this time, especially as hotels and brands are trying to stay engaged and prepare now for the upturn and the reopening?
So I think there's a couple things to that. I think one is, we're in a state of reaction, and I think that we need to kind of move towards a state of proaction. And that's in the sense of messaging as well. I think, it's core to focus on what it is that your key mission was in starting your boutique hotel, your boutique business, and not to let that be diluted or changed based off of kind of the reaction of all the messages that are hitting. But from the standpoint of communications, I think what we look at is kind of the now, next, and future. The now, being that there's a lot of messages going on about COVID and kind of this kind of general, I'll say, empathy. And I think that the importance of that is to really make it local and very true to kind of what it is that the soul of your brand or hotel was all about. So instead of, having a broad message, really segment your database into, your most avid partisans or your employees, or how do you be able to reach out to various groups in ways that feel really intimate. I think that's what is so special about the boutique community, is the level of intimacy and how it is that we highlight communications that showcase what's happening in your community, how maybe you're helping, stories of how your employees are helping. Those are the now types of conversations that I think allow people to understand, your vulnerability. And I think that transparency is what's very endearing. The next, I think, is what we have to start planning on. How do you start talking about some of the initiatives that you're putting in place to make people feel safer, right? But still part of kind of what the spirit and character of what your hotel offers, and start kind of weaving those stories within the kind of next type of communications. And then the future, I think is kind of the area that's the foggiest in some ways. But I think that, that's where it is that we really start to take place with what it is, the physical spaces, and how that changes, how we keep our restaurants feeling safe, how if there's rooms, for better connection versus rooms, for feeling like you have that distance. And those are the types of things that you need to start thinking about and planning, but more in the physical kind of environment. So that's how we're looking and kind of catering our clients' communications and thinkings.
Makes sense. Yeah. I think it is such a dynamic environment. It's sort of, at some point you kind of have to just go with, after you put your thought into it and you use all your resources, you kind of just have to take that leap of faith and do something, right? Rather than constantly kind of sitting in this unknown place. That reminds me, Carolyn, I know you focus a lot on messaging, especially as it relates to PR strategy. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you're seeing and sort of some of the key initiatives that you've deployed that you found successful, or sort of what you're looking at for the future.
And absolutely, I follow what Remy was saying, that there is so much changing, and as we're reacting and also trying to be proactive, in the world of PR, we feel actually a little fortunate because we are kind of waiting to see when businesses will open. So we have a little bit more time to plan. That's what we consider our long lead. But right now we're feeling that there is such an evolution. We were in this crisis, then we moved into recovery, and we've already submitted recovery plans for most of our clients. And then we're really moving them over to being open for business. That's really where we're at. I feel like the guests or our customers want that personal connection. We're still feeling like that's very strong. But interestingly enough, we're all learning here. So I always say, stay informed. We're actually doing surveys with our guests, you know, on behalf of our clients, with the media, you know, even with our clients in themselves, we're asking them, because I feel like there's so much to stay informed, learn, and use those surveys and that feedback, especially from your guests, to kind of come up with strong messaging. But I can't agree more. Content is so important right now. We're finding out that our guests are at home. We're all at home. So we are so, you know, we're really looking for those personal connections. We're looking for a really great connection with our hotels. And I feel like virtual experiences, as we know, are going to be very important, or are very important right now. I think you need to have a purpose, and I think you need to really tell your brand story, like Remy was saying. Be inspirational. It's okay to still do some feel-good stories. That's okay. We were in that mindset of everything was about COVID. Now it's shifting a little bit to be COVID related. And obviously, like I said, what are you doing? How are you planning to open? And what will you be doing? And I think we all know that guests are no longer thinking about how fluffy are your pillows. They're really going to be thinking about how safe are you? How clean is your program? What programs and protocols will you have in place? And when we can open for business, what kind of messaging will you be creating at that point that's really going to resonate with your audience? I think that's all very key.
Yeah, I totally agree. Having a phased approach is really important, and getting the messages out at the right time and considering the market and the audience. With that being said, obviously with public relations, you know, there's not just your guests, the audience, the readers like us, but there's also the actual media. And I can only imagine what they're going through at this time, that they must be inundated with insanity. What are you seeing there? How are people getting access to press? What's your perspective on how a hotel can actually get their message in the right publications? Can you share some insights with us on that?
Sure. You're absolutely right. The press right now they literally are burnt out. They're like overwhelmed. They're working 24/7. Their deadlines have gone, you know, from like a week to 24, maybe to 72 hours. We're learning that roundups are key. If you are working with the press, you have to be very sensitive to their timing, because they're very much working around the clock. Be very sensitive. And I think the most important thing is, don't be self-serving. You don't want to be pushing a message out there that they're really not interested in. So do your diligence, do your research. We actually are surveying a lot of our top contacts, and they actually appreciate it. They come back to us with really good information of what they're looking for. You want to be a resource, and not a nuisance. You want to basically always be able to communicate with them. Everyone's interested in getting their brand voice out there. But despite the ongoing situation, there's still an appetite for alternative stories and, you know, news stories that are lighthearted in content. Right now, as everyone's at home, they want to know what we're doing, the press, you know, what our clients are doing to really stimulate and reach out and personalize their experiences with their guests. So they love that information. One of the things I do say to our clients, because they want a feature story, that's not going to happen right now. There will be roundups. And as you know, a lot of the press at the beginning, we're talking about what hotels were closed, what's going on, who's on furlough, what is happening with COVID, how are people reacting to that. Now we're feeling that as people are feeling more comfortable and they might be leaving our homes soon, hopefully, and opening for business, the press now are going to want to know who will be opening, what you'll be doing, like we talked about, what safety measures will be in place. There will be a lot of opportunities and also competition, so know and be careful with your messaging. And I think what's important, it changes daily, so be really careful about how you're putting your message out there, especially with the press, since they are, like I said, inundated. How do we reach them? Social media is, as you know, very key, or through our email contacts and personalized media outreach. That's the best way to really attract and be cognizant with the press's time as well.
Awesome, really helpful. Remy or Richard or Patrick, for that matter, do you have any insights in your particular areas? You know, Richard, obviously you work and represent an amazing technology company. How are you approaching the media and press communications at this time?
So I think there's different parts of it, and I think the entire industry has gone through, I think, a different kind of phased approach of you know, the types of communication, the types of questions that you're actually kind of getting. I think it is in the same way that that both Carolyn and Remy were talking about it. It's, you know, you go from talking about initial impact, then to kind of talking and thinking about regrouping, and now basically thinking about, you know, what does the next phase actually look like? What is the next, how do we recover? How do we reopen? How do we actually kind of respond? And I think that it presents a great opportunity in certain ways as well. I mean, it's a pretty horrific, you know, blow that I think we've all had in the hotel industry as a general thing. But you know, for us as a technology company, it very much is within what we were trying to kind of do in a lot of cases where, you know, the idea of using our technology is towards automating a lot of the back-end processes, you know, creating some form of contactless experience so that you actually kind of create a deeper connection. And I think, you know, when you think about what the customer and the consumer, particularly this time, is looking for, I do think that from a boutique hotelier's perspective, there is a way to use this to your advantage to, you know, to make sure that the way that you're presenting yourself, especially online, is, you know, moving towards a place of deeper trust with the property itself, because, you know, everyone's going to be worried about, you know, the way that the rooms have been cleaned, you know, the types of operations that you have there, the way that you've actually kind of, you know, thought about all of your different spaces and how you're actually kind of, you know, dealing with them, how you're presenting your property in a way that has created a kind of safe environment and a trustful environment for your guests. And I think that should really drive a more direct conversation, and therefore, you know, you should see an opportunity in being able to drive more direct bookings, because, you know, the customer is probably going to actually kind of, you know, try to reach out to you directly rather than just book through an anonymous, you know, OTA. So I think that if we can actually kind of capture some of those opportunities, it does hold us in good stead, you know, going out of this crisis. And I think to be able to manage that amount of you know, conversations, then you do have to look at technology. You know, what are the ways that you're going to be able to automate certain processes on your website? Are you able to actually kind of work with a provider that's able to kind of, you know, update the content on your website quickly enough so that you can kind of present an up-to-date picture? You know, then working with revenue managers and revenue management systems such as Duetto, you know, to be able to actually kind of respond to certain hikes in you know, once we, for example, in many of the different states, understand when the shutdown will kind of be ceasing. So, for example, here in New York, there's still a lot of uncertainty around exactly when this finishes. I think when, for example, a lot more states have clarity, that's going to probably create a big boom and a big demand. So are you actually working with the right technology providers to be able to actually kind of respond to those differentials in terms of price and everything like that. So I think there are challenges, but there are huge opportunities coming out of this that you can actually rework into a better brand strategy and a greater opportunity down the line as well.
I'll add on to that, and then probably Patrick has a good response to that as well. I think that, we're definitely focused more on the online experience than we ever have been before, because I think that this is the time that people need to feel like they're transported into that property because of those feelings of safety and specificity. There won't be reviews out there in a timely manner as to what the level of standards are for that. So it's a lot of understanding, just through their online experience, how, that people are at that hotelier specifically is being cautious and careful. I think that the more nomadic behavior will be a little bit more pulled back, I think, in this. And I think that while people want to have unique experiences, they want to feel like there is an awareness of a new normal. And I think the best way to do that is to communicate that in your online experience.
Absolutely. Patrick, can you share with us your insights? You obviously have a brilliant background. We'd love to hear what's going on in your area.
Sure, thank you. To answer the question around media really quickly, I think this is actually a time where if you've actually built relationships with content creators, with journalists and others, they're gonna come back to you if you've had a point of view in the past. And so I think one of the keys in this environment is to have a point of view. I think there's a lot of generic things being kind of sent out. We all get all of those, here's what our company feels about COVID and what we're doing. And many of those just seem like boilerplate almost, like more like written by a lawyer than a human trying to communicate with people. And so I feel like that plays well with sort of the press and social media, but then it also presents an opportunity to be embedded in the community. And I think everybody is looking for stories about their communities because we're all kind of isolated right now. And there are things that these brick and mortar businesses that have been pillars of their community can still be doing to remain relevant. And, we're hearing some of that in terms of, World Central Kitchen type, activities and housing healthcare workers and housing family members that need to travel to go take care of a sick relative and so on. And then the last thing is, I think as people, many people are sort of struggling with various forms of self-improvement to try to leverage this time period as a time of growth. And I believe that brands can actually tell a compelling story and have it be authentic around how they're using this time period to improve. So that can be things like evaluating their tech stack, where it's really, really hard to make pretty big changes when you're running 98% occupancy and, lots of pressure in the business. Whereas there's actually an opportunity right now during a forced lull to look at processes, procedures, how you train and develop your people, what technology you deploy, whether or not you're using it to its best capabilities. Certainly our customer success people are busy. But they also have bandwidth to be doing, refresher trainings and all kinds of things around best practices and so on. And I think that can even be communicated to your guests to mirror what they're going through in their lives and to realize that the people within your company and your company itself is also going through a bit of transformation as you grapple with what this means for the future. And maybe even engage them in that discussion. Give them a role in that to, feel like they have agency in helping your brand evolve and in partnership with the guests that have had really trusting, intimate relationships, with these assets, with the people within your company as well, and to feel like that relationship is continuing even when they're not sleeping in your beds at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. A humanized approach is so important.
Yeah, I just wanted to actually just add to that. I think that's incredibly important. And I think with the power of social media today, it really allows people, it allows you to also kind of create a small kind of media empire just using your own phone, So I think when it comes to, and I've seen, especially in the boutique community, I've seen certain boutique hoteliers, cast from their own homes, talk about what they're making for dinner. And I think this is, it comes to real hospitality, the idea that, I think us as a kind of boutique community, that's essentially where you have a lot of the true hoteliers, the people that are basically kind of doing this because of a passion that they have for, their location, for their brand, for the way that they actually kind of see their hotel a little bit differently. And it allows you to actually kind of also talk about those bigger plans and actually introduce that kind of bigger community that you have, whether it's the local community of the people that, that are around you, in and around you, or it's actually the people that work there. So, for you to be able to meet your housekeeper prior to actually arriving, to be talked through the type of experience that she's going to be providing for you, in cleaning your room, to have that as a personalized email. I'm with Patrick in this, that, let's use the time that we actually have. I know that there's always difficulties in terms of, the furloughed staff and things like that. But if you do still have capacities and capabilities to be able to tell those kinds of much more personalized stories, it brings a huge amount of trust. So I think the one side is basically using technology to be able to amplify that to a huge network, but also using the resources that you have in-house to be able to kind of actually create much more of that personalized experience, almost to a one-to-one kind of level. And I think that's a huge opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this is definitely an unparalleled opportunity. I mean, you never get this sort of sounding board or this soapbox, if you will, to be real with your audiences. It's incredible. And it is the spirit of hospitality, boutique hotels and other types of properties alike, is that we always say in hotels, we are our people, the heart of the house, and bringing that heart of the house to our audience is it's a pretty incredible opportunity to have. On a more technical level, as we look at digital marketing, I know, a month or so ago, many people have reduced their digital marketing spend and, are obviously focusing on their branding and their story and understanding how they want to re-message that back. Do you see, and what do you recommend, or what are you seeing in terms of digital marketing spend or the competition forthcoming in the marketplace with spend on PPC campaigns? Can you tell us or provide us any insights on that? Richard or Patrick maybe?
Oh. I can take this, but I don't want to kind of I always feel like I always end up speaking too much, but Patrick, I don't know if you want to say.
Sure, I can give a few. I mean, I think it's premature to reintroduce a lot of spend right now, to be honest. I think that particularly anything that's designed to drive room nights is going to be, I think, wasted spend to a large extent. And frankly, it'll sound tone deaf to be doing real calls to action to, book now and get a big discount. I also think that to over discount right now would be a huge mistake. If you're open and running whatever it is, 10% occupancy, I don't think lowering your rate by 50% is going to help your business in the short term very much. And then it'll definitely hurt it in the long term. So we've seen that in the last 2 recessions, that companies that over discounted it and panicked maybe did very marginally better during the crisis itself, but then actually suffered for years afterwards. And so we're definitely encouraging people not to repeat that mistake. And so, the sort of brand communication and connection and social that we've been talking about is still relevant and should be continued to be invested in. I would say, though, that the majority of spend on digital from hotel companies, rightfully so, is typically very ROI driven, room night production focused, and I think that should be pretty much on hold. Aside from maybe some aspirational messages, we're seeing in our data that there's pretty strong bookings happening from September and beyond. I've probably had conversations with probably 4 dozen of our larger customers, and we see it in the data itself that there's really quite surprisingly strong demand. Now, maybe that's just hopeful, daydreaming on the part of the customers to be saying, okay, I'm trapped now, but there's going to be this amazing future when I can travel again for both business and leisure, including for trade shows that have been pushed from the spring or summer to the fall and so on. And we should meet them in that space, around envisioning this future, and to make it clear that they can, get ahead of things, get a fair deal, and book now. And then the last thing I would say is, and I don't know if this is exactly digital related, but what you don't want is prices out there right now that I think people could latch on to as examples of gouging either. So I talked about not over discounting, but I think people are going to look online, and I think there's going to be a lot of cynicism if they see companies where, if, for instance, you do realize that you're in a location where, there's really high demand because of government employees or healthcare workers needing to stay there. I think to jack up those prices and then to be having that available online could be a real detriment to the brand. And so I would resist that temptation as well to get aggressive if you're one of the select few hotels that, happens to have strong demand. And we do see some of those in our portfolio as well.
Yeah.
To maybe add to it, I think it's an opportunity for you to maybe even go back to some of your clients. I think then going on that, for example, that branding discussion, I think it's a great time to also kind of understand, if you don't feel that you have a clear example of, who is your customer segment, where have you been successful, and so that you can actually kind of build to think about, where you will be spending the money and what you will be targeting in the future. I feel like this is one thing where us as hoteliers are not as sophisticated as we should be to kind of build out that perfect persona of the type of client that we do want to attract. And I think you can also kind of use this time to go back to actually reach out to some of those guests with, for example, certain surveys or certain ideas, but to really actually understand what those guests are looking for, and why they would be looking to actually kind of come to you specifically, and how you can actually kind of raise that value proposition that you actually kind of have to them. So I think from those perspectives, it comes under the umbrella of digital. I think spending for digital marketing is, as Patrick says, a little bit of a wasted effort at this moment. But at the same time, I think you can look into creating longer term content and a longer term kind of strategy that you will then be able to kind of carry out of this. So I think whether that's working with advisors, or like, for example, some of our panelists, or anyone else, that you can actually kind of create a much more coherent plan that will serve you for the next couple of months to come, but even for a year and 18 months up until there's a viable vaccine, and we really do come back to a kind of normal world.
I mean, to add on to that, I think that part of what's important this time is a sense of reinvention. And a lot of what we speak about is, okay, it needs to be a reinvention, though, that's not reactive, that's really inherent to your mission and the foundation and the key kind of communication that is important, to your brand, to your clientele, to your, local neighborhood, and kind of what that means. What we often find is that foundation isn't set, right? And that they're really not drawing from a place that they know what lens is the appropriate lens for them to communicate in. What really their brand is about, who really is the target audience, and the mindset that they want to attract. So that now is a time to dig into that further and come out of this with a clear understanding of that, so that as you're moving forward, you're that much stronger in your conviction, your point of view, kind of why it is, you know, that you feel like you're differentiated in the market. So take this moment as a nice, you know, maybe not a nice, but, you know, a bit of a pause to be able to reorient that, so that, you know, we're able to, you know, have that foundation in the future, and be able to build on that in the communication. And I think that's what the consumers are going to really see and notice, is, you know, it's going to be a noisy space over the next 6-9 months. And there'll be ones that are able to break through. And I think on the boutique level, it's that much more difficult to do that. And so I think that, you know, you really need to orient on what your intention and purpose is. And I think people will connect with that.
I was going to mention too, Remy, from a PR perspective, and even because we do a lot of marketing communications as well, your new audience is right outside your doorstep, as we all know, because you're really community minded. And I even think the press search for stories that they feel are important to their readership. So it's kind of like an interesting cycle, that when we're looking for those stories. But remember too, domestic travel is going to be the first that's back. We all know that we're not taking a flight anytime soon. So let's think about who our audience, our new audience might be. And that could also be like a 2 to 3 hour drive away. Most people are going to take to their cars and they're going to drive, and they're going to want to be somewhere still close to home. So people right outside your door, like I said, or just a few hours away. Think about those markets and think about working with influencers. Like, as we say in social media, your influencer is not just a micro influencer or someone who does that full time. It is your guest, it's also your employees, and it is your community. So if you are community minded and you're reaching out, make sure that those collaborations are key. And obviously working with the regional press, working with the local press is so important, because you really want to have still that personal connection. I feel like your guests will enjoy seeing what you're doing from the community side, and also reaching out to them in a different way. If you don't have a big, you know, advertising budget or social media budget, you can definitely use what we were saying before, those virtual experiences to come right into people's home. Because right now they do want to stay informed and they do want to know what's happening. So I agree that you really can reach out to that new audience as well, right outside your front door.
Totally agree. I think everyone also just really wants to stay connected. So it's about, how do you connect and stay there, you know, especially when we're all at home and, you know, somewhat isolated. That's really important. Just sort of turning the lens a little bit on sort of the concept of hygiene and sanitation and messaging. And I kind of want to hear a little bit more from Remy about this, because, you know, these type of key words, if you will, are very important, as well as safety, but they're not necessarily glamorous, and clearly, you know, aren't always used in the luxury space specifically. So Remy, what's your take on how the best way to sort of bring that messaging into your branding and storytelling?
I think there's, you know, for how much we received, how many emails we all received that were general, you know, COVID emails, I think that we need to be very cautious of the balance and nuance of talking about safety and talking about hygiene. And, you know, I think that there are ways that you can do that in a more high-end way. I think, you know, when it comes to, you know, operations and being able to kind of package what it is that your intention and your approach is, I think that could almost be a sub-branded effort, right? That allows people to feel that safety and confidence, but lets them deep dive if they want to deep dive, that it's not kind of the constant messages that you're putting out. Because it isn't why they want to stay there. What they want to stay there because they want the experience, they want, you know, the service, they want the unique environment. And those are the things that we want to continue to pull and push as we move in that way. But I think that we need to be able to promote hygiene in a way, promote, you know, cleanliness and cleanliness protocols in a way that allows them to feel kind of like it's a good keeping stamp of approval. Now, I think that there are ways that you can be able to showcase more of that in social. You know, what are the things that you're trying to do to be able to kind of heighten that level of awareness and kind of protocols within the space. But I do think that it needs to be a good balance to be able to navigate that. And I think that we need to look to, and these are some of the conversations even we're having at the BLLA, how it is that we create a better network within the boutique space to allow for a more universal kind of protocol and standards, so everyone's not having to kind of figure that out themselves. And I think those are kind of the future things that we need to be thinking about now, so that way, you know, it isn't done on an individual level of kind of what it is that a consumer sees and measures as the you know, degree for which somebody's become, but it's part of kind of what we all adopt as expectations and standards across the board.
Awesome. Couldn't agree with more. Yeah.
If I could jump in really quickly, I think one of the things that'll be interesting is whether or not there are almost brands that hotels end up partnering with to, you know, be able to communicate, you know, that they're bringing in best in class type technologies and treatments and things, that then the guest can actually then go and research and say, oh, wow, that's actually really impressive. And so rather than, because I think a lot of people will kind of talk and say, we're doing everything the most rigorous. And so I think where there is possibilities for those types of partnerships with, you know, very reputable companies, I think that could be really beneficial. That a friend of mine is in a company that has this coating that can be put on surfaces and keeps them antimicrobial for, I think it's 90 days. They've had really strong success in things like healthcare and in transit. And I don't think that they ever really imagined that the hotel industry would be a big growth area. But now all of a sudden, you know, interest from the hotel sector is starting to boom. And I think those sorts of things will be really interesting, is to see, you know, maybe even technologies that have never really been present in the hotel industry and maybe only, you know, were thought to be necessary in something like a hospital or on a, you know, subway car, and how those things, you know, safely and economically get implemented and then communicated to the guests to say, you know, these are the partnerships we have, and this is how rigorous we're being, in a way that's actually verifiable by guests, and maybe even things that, you know, things like media and things would want to cover about these sort of new techniques that are being brought into the market.
Yeah, I was just actually going to mention that the press love, you know, when there is a smart and clever collaboration. We can't agree more. We're actually thinking about, like, especially from the boutique lifestyle advantage, like, what about eco-friendly? Like, what about trying to partner with really smart, you know, companies that are also going to give back somehow? Because I think that's part of that whole lifestyle experience. Some of the big boxes are literally putting, we were saying this before, they're putting like Lysol in their cleanliness program branding. Maybe there's a way, I know you're laughing, but it's true. Maybe there's a way to think about our lifestyle and boutique. Maybe there's a different way to approach that to the guests, that they feel like, wow, I love that they're working with this like-minded brand. I can really resonate. We do that a lot with our clients, even if it's not from the, you know, from being clean, I should say. It should also be about like-minded partnerships that really resonate with your guests. I think it's important. And I go back to the surveys. We are telling our clients, ask your guests what they want, because I feel like as we're all trying to navigate this, they might also be interested in something else that might be outside of just how clean and how safe. That is very important. But they're also going to want to know how you're utilizing your space. Can you move things outdoors? What kind of distance will there be? We're very lucky to be in the boutique hotel sector, because most of our hotels can offer that to our guests, where you're not with large crowds. And we know that the meeting space is going to be very difficult. So how do we measure that, and how do we bring that to life for our guests? I feel like asking those questions can be really helpful. But I do agree that these are great media opportunities when you do some great collaborations as well.
I do also think that not only just like cleanliness and hygiene, but also, you know, people are going to be more health conscious. Not that your hotel needs to be evolved into a wellness hotel if that's not its initial mission, but, you know, how do you bring this more sense of health within the space? And I think those touches are things that will kind of move from a sense of kind of maybe more fear-based to more, you know, excitement-based, and you know, more wanting to be kind of part of that because they understand this, you know, evolution of mindset, and that we do want to be in healthier environments. So those are some things I think to consider as a different kind of paradigm of opportunities.
And Remy, we're seeing wellness covered in the press like all the time now, and I don't think it's going to be something that's just a fad. I do agree that as we all come back to travel, we're all there. We're all going to need that sense of wellness, sense of self-discovery, peacefulness. And like you said, you don't have to have that program at your property, but you should really think about what you can give to your clients or your guests that will make them feel that sense of well-being. It's very, very important.
Yeah, for me, like the other part of that is, you know, going on the local aspect. You know, like I definitely once this is over want to kind of get away from my own house. You know, whether it's just being able to kind of travel out somewhere, even for an afternoon, basically for me and my wife to have, you know, some time alone away from the children, and to be able to kind of put that into a more fuller experience. Where, you know, somebody is able to actually kind of look after us in a safe and trusted way. Those types of things I think really speak to the boutique experience. And I think it is basically about, again, with, you know, I think the idea that you would basically come into a boutique hotel and get sprayed with basically a can of Lysol, I think that's not really the boutique experience. I'm sure it works for some people, but I think for the boutique experience, it's not going to be the main thing. So it's about incorporating that into your brand and understanding that, you know, that sense of trust, that sense of, you know, the brand experience has to kind of permeate every single, you know, pore of your existence, and then has to kind of reflect this new reality. So it might be things that are, you know, in a way more costly, but I think there's also a real kind of opportunity for you to kind of build on that as a branding opportunity to actually say, look, we have these options. You know, if you're very scared, you can basically kind of do it in this way. If you would like to have more seclusion, you can do it in this way. If you would like to have, you know, the same housekeeper for the entire time that you're staying here, maybe that's another revenue opportunity. If you would only like to have your room cleaned once for the entire couple of days, basically, that you're staying again. And I feel like we can get into a much better space thinking through this in a creative way. Again, I'm probably just going to kind of push the angle of the fact that you probably need to kind of invest in the types of technology that can enable this and can kind of track all of these different requests. But from that perspective, I think it is also about, you know, being flexible, but also consistent to the brand message that you do want to actually deliver.
Absolutely. And I know, you know, just speaking from experience, boutique hotels and independent hotels are all about their brand ethos, not just in the marketing and messaging in the digital sense or online, but in the actual tactile experience. And so looking at the flow of the operation and where you check in, how you park, ballet, you know, or self-park, et cetera, all of those things all sort of come together to create this new, reinvent basically your hotel experience. If we just quickly shift over just a little bit more to the financial side, I'm sure that a lot of our audience is trying to figure out how they forecast their revenue and how they plan their staffing model and really maximize profitability in such a difficult time. Can you, and maybe Patrick or anyone, you know, that has a point of view, contribute to a point of view on how someone would approach forecasting when there's no historical data that's really there for us? When is the right time? How do you look at 2021? Just share with us your insights.
Sure. So this is a conversation I have often with hoteliers these days because of the nature of our business. I mean, the fact is you can't forecast with very much accuracy right now, and I think we need to accept that. What we can be is prepared. And so I think it's much more about scenario planning at this point. and not just generic, but like really scenario planning around, you know, specific things based on your knowledge of your customer segments, communicating with them, your knowledge of your market, your strategies, and so forth, and to have various, you know, versions of high, medium, and low, or more nuanced scenarios than that, because there's no precedent for what we're going through. And I think agility and, you know, being able to, you know, have plans in place that people are ready to execute will end up being the key. And, you know, what's difficult around that as well is you have to communicate that to your employees also. And, you know, with furloughs and layoffs and other things going on right now, I think people, you know, will obviously want to hear that everything's going to get back to normal and great. But I think it's important to resist that temptation to create false expectations and the emotional roller coaster. And even if there is a spike in demand, you know, to keep contextualizing it for people so that they're realistic. You know, in the last recession, I was at Wynn, and, you know, we saw a huge collapse in convention demand in Las Vegas initially, particularly when the government said that anyone who had taken any federal money couldn't go to Vegas. The president specifically called out Vegas. And so we had massive cancellations and then obviously a protracted recovery with lots of ups and downs throughout. And one of the more difficult transitions there was to take a forecast that had been predominantly for something like pricing and to figure out how to drill that down into becoming much more sophisticated at building staffing forecasts. So really understanding the relationship between occupancy levels and demand in, you know, the restaurant, and finding that it's not just occupancy, it's the mix of business, the purpose of the travel, the rate that people paid, and so forth, that really impact, you know, and how it flows through to those other outlets. And so in some cases, we were able to find good historical data to help us figure out, you know, what we should expect in the future based on the mix of business, the rate paid, and so forth, and things like, you know, how many check-ins and check-outs per day there are going to be, and so forth. And that organization at the time was successfully also able to transition from, you know, virtually everybody being full-time to having a much lower number of full-time with steady extras, and then allowing people to actually then be a steady extra at multiple properties. And so, you know, maybe even communicating with those other properties around, you know, when they might be seeing a peak, when somebody else isn't, and staff becoming much more flexible, so that, you know, all these conversations are things that you probably wouldn't be having otherwise. And I assume this will be at least as, you know, critical during this one, if not more, to be thinking through all of those sorts of impacts.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think, you know, I absolutely echo that, that sentiment, and the flexibility really has to be there. I think the one thing that everyone has to realize is that, you know, nobody knows. And so the only way for anyone to actually kind of get much better clarity is to do their own research. You know, like, there are tools, there are things out there, there are sentiment analysis tools that will be happening for the entire market. But, you know, the same type of rebound that you're seeing in China, in APAC, in Europe, it's going to be different. There is no one size fits all. Some parts of the world might rebound to 60%, some might rebound to 10%, some might basically kind of see a blip of 80% for one part, and then basically get closed down again. There is no all-encompassing answer to this question. So I think it's about, for example, you know, again, coming back, utilizing that that database of customers that you already have, canvassing them, trying to, for example, work with companies that have hosted events basically with you before, trying to understand what it would take to actually kind of get them to host an event again. Think about, you know, talking to those customers to get a certain type sentiment analysis, because it's going to be very difficult to get the ones that might be thinking of it from a future perspective. So it's better to kind of at least focus on the known customers that have come, and then also to kind of utilize the networks that you have. So for example, utilizing the BLLA network, trying to figure out, to push more and more of, let's say, surveys that can come out to a certain segment of customers, working with a local crowd to basically, for example, pool resources. So if you know that you and a local restaurant share a certain type of clientele that basically is very, has a symbiosis to it, there it's great to actually kind of use those network effects to make sure that you're both actually kind of combining together for a much more rounded picture. But I think it has to be this idea of, we can all sit here and basically say that, there's a magic silver bullet that's going to be able to actually kind of do it for you. You can study the types of responses to the crises in your kind of local area, in your state, but I think it really, really has to come from your own work and your own research to actually kind of figure out what type of scenario are you confident that you're coming back to.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think obviously data is so helpful to the extent that you can get it, and also sharing and collaborating insights with others is really, it expands your resources in multiplicity when you have the ability to do that. It looks like we're sort of coming on an hour at this point. I don't want to spend too much more time, but if anyone has any other burning insights that they want to share with the audience, please feel free to jump in now. And then if not, we can turn it over to Ariella. Thank you all so much. This was awesome. Really insightful, really helpful. Boutique strong. Thank you so much. Ariella, over to you.
Hi guys, thank you everyone. We're calling our speakers boutique educators, so thank you to our boutique educators. I just have a couple quick reminders before we head off here. Oh, you can see me. Please email us with any questions, info@blla.org. If you just want to say hi, I'll say hello back. We just want to stay connected with everyone. And speaking of staying connected, please follow us on social media. We'll follow you back. Stay up to date on our website, stay-boutique.com. That content will be moving to BLLA.org soon. But for now, all of our recaps for our webinars will be there, some fun Q&As, really tactical resources as well. As was kind of mentioned in this panel, we do have some new things coming up soon, where I saw a lot of questions come in, and there will be some answers that BLA will be providing very soon for that. And lastly, like Cara said, #boutique strong, #save boutique hotels. And we have a little saying here at the home office, stay home, stay safe, and stay boutique. Let's not forget. And just as a final thing to say, like I said at the beginning, we reinvented what a hotel was as a community, right? We made it this place to stay overnight, and now we made it a cultural epicenter. Like we're not going anywhere. We're just going to adapt to what we call the new paradigm. We're going to make some changes, but we're just going to grow. People are going to want to stay in small places. That's what boutique is. It's these smaller, more intimate experiences that are curated and unique. So we have a lot of great things coming. So last but not least, thank you to everyone, and we'll see you for Friday's webinar of the unfamiliar shift of boutique coffee shops. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.